Austin Barnes to the injured list, multiple fractures in his toe. Hunter Feduccia called up to replace him on the roster. But I think it's a fair question, Matt. Is Hunter Feduccia the long-term playoff answer for the Dodgers at backup catcher, or is top prospect, now friend of Dodger heads, Dalton Rushing, possibly a guy to watch out for in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it was Feducia getting recalled as the corresponding move for Barnes going on the IL makes sense and was expected. And I think, at the time, this is Sunday night when Barnes came out of the game and they said, oh, he took a foul ball, this and that. Like, I wasn't expecting him to have another fracture. Like, that's unfortunate. But I did think Dave did say Sunday that he would be going on the IL and it would be Feducia. And that all made sense. Like, it's only going to be, potentially 10 days again. Yes, let Feducia do it. I'm looking at down the line, assuming the Dodgers are going to make the playoffs, which actually they are. No, sorry, not assuming. They are going to make the playoffs. They're going to end up winning the NL West. I forgot we're going
positive
with the
vibes only,
positive
baby.
vibes tonight. They're going to win the NL West, go into the postseason. At least at worst, they'll be the second seed, maybe end up with the best record in the NL. That still has to play out. But I'm sort of thinking, is there a scenario where Feducia is not going to play if Barnes isn't available in the playoffs, which they haven't said one way or the other? The hope is that he will be right now. If he's not,
the hope is that he'll be available.
The team's hope is that he will be available.
I wanted to clarify.
The official report from the team is that hopefully he'll be available.
Hopeful. Got it. Promising are the scans promising? Would we say on Barnes's toe?
We haven't gotten that far yet. Let's say Barnes can't play in October, or at least even if if it's just the NLDS. Part of me feels like, do you give Dalton Rushing a chance? Because yes, crazy things can happen, and I guess if it does happen and you have to go to a catcher who's making his MLB debut behind the plate in the playoffs, like that could get dicey. I understand that. But Feducia, and I know you have stats that are going to combat my argument.
Batting average, Matt. I'm going to even quote batting average for the record here. Go ahead.
I just sort of feel like, could you get more upside and play and potential from Rushing than Feducia at the plate from a hitting standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, undoubtedly. Like the answer, if you're trying for offensive upside, is absolutely Dalton Rushing. And this is coming from a guy who is very pro Hunter Feduccia. I think he'd be the backup catcher, if not the starting catcher on like half of Major League Baseball if he were in an organization other than the Dodgers. The catch with Rushing is a couple things. First, he's been playing almost exclusively outfield in AAA of late. And so shifting him back to catcher, obviously a position he's very comfortable with, but this isn't a guy who spent a ton of time with the Dodgers pitchers at any capacity. He wasn't in spring training, he was in spring training. So, I mean, I guess half these guys weren't there during spring training. So what does that matter? Never mind. But the other piece to me is just of late, like Dalton Rushing's actually cooled off pretty significantly in AAA. Is it possible the end of a long season, the expectations are catching up with him? Since August 28th, he's just 9 for his last 52. That's Dalton Rushing. Feduccia, on the other hand, in the month of September, hitting 346, on-base percentage over 400, slug of 462. And so Feduccia is actually a guy that has put up solid numbers. The one nice thing, I think, if I'm Dave Roberts, the one nice thing about this is he doesn't have to answer questions about who's catching who in the postseason if either of these guys is up, because Will Smith is just going to be playing every single day, which I know some people aren't too happy about, although the numbers have been better over the last couple of weeks. And so combining the fact that he hasn't played catcher in, a month at least, with the fact that he's also slowing down, I think it makes perfect sense for me that Feduccia is the guy who gets called up. Although I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Rushing found his way onto the playoff roster just as a bat. Not even like, this might be the craziest hot take in the world. Like, I think you could have Feduccia and Dalton Rushing potentially on the postseason roster where Rushing is not the catcher. Like, maybe he's a third catcher so he can come in and pinch hit, and then you've still got Feduccia in emergency situations. But like we were talking about Barnes and Smith and Rushing all making it. So I don't see a reason why Rushing and Feduccia couldn't also be there with Smith.
Yeah, and the Dodgers have done that before with was it Carlos Ruiz? I forget his first. I think was it Carlos? I know it was Ruiz.
Carlos Ruiz.
Yeah, when they carried 3 catchers in the playoffs. So it's something that they have done. I think from my standpoint, whether it's Feduccia or Rushing, and I'm seeing a lot of comments saying, that catching and pitch calling and stuff like that is magnified in the playoffs. I fully
Yep.
agree. Will Smith is going to start if Barnes isn't available. I mean, Will Smith was probably starting every NLDS game anyway, and if they advance, probably 6 out of 7 in the NLCS type thing. But if Barnes isn't available, Will Smith is starting every NLDS game behind the plate. So to me, like, it's more of like, at that point, if something crazy happens and Feducia or Rushing is pressed into emergency duty as a catcher, like, that's a toss up for me. So I'm not looking at it from that standpoint. Because, and either one of those guys, if they end up behind the plate, the pitches are going to be called by either whoever's on the mound or somebody in the dugout. Like, there's no way they're going to let one of their rookie catchers call pitches in the playoffs. I don't think.
Yeah.
So that's a wash, in my opinion. So like you said, like, for me, it boils down to, who are you going to potentially get more out of from maybe a pinch hit appearance, something like that. I thought Rushing, but as you laid out, like, he has cooled off at the plate, and I think that would be a factor.
Yeah. Right now, keep in mind the Dodgers have 14 position players up. By the time the postseason rolled around, that number would have to come back down to 13. And so you've got guys like Andy Pages, Dalton Rushing, Chris Taylor, I think, are the three guys sort of competing for 2 spots there. Obviously, the Dodgers up until this point have clearly Kevin Kiermaier, is the other guy in that mix. So clearly Dalton Rushing, if he was going to be coming up for the postseason roster, I imagine they would want to get him at bats at the major league level. And so the fact that that hasn't happened, the fact that a day like today isn't the day they choose to make that decision, maybe that says something. Or again, maybe they just view him as an outfielder, and so he wasn't even under consideration to be the backup catcher because his role moving forward in the short term is simply as a left fielder type of a bat. We'll see how that handles. But again, Austin Barnes to the injured list and remains to be seen. And to your point, the Dodgers are hopeful that this is not season ending for Austin Barnes. So stop us if you've heard that language before.